I kind of left that up as the, I don't know, just the welcome screen or the first screen you see when you came through the door. However, my intention wasn't to focus only on that. The reason I did is because the second slide has a little bit of my background information on it. 87 grad, high school.
Lackawanna.
Lackawanna County,
Oh.
a couple miles north of Scranton.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I started with college, and I also joined the U.S. Army Reserve. I was called up Desert Shield, Desert Storm in 1991, where I achieved whatever you want to call it, veteran status. When I came back, I applied for employment with the Pennsylvania State Police. Kind of at my dad's urging, he busted my chops for months and months and months, telling me I should do what I had absolutely no interest, and to appease him, I took the test. And I did so well that I started to look into it and took it kind of serious and wound up putting 25 years in. I started as a patrol trooper. I spent about 5 years as a criminal investigator. Some of that time I spent in the behavioral assessment unit, which is kind of getting into the psyche of victims and perpetrators. Not like you see on TV, however, all the training that I received was from the FBI and some of their best people. And we focused primarily on cold cases, old stuff, and trying to do victimologies and putting together offender profiles and stuff like that. Very rarely did we do a whole lot of it, or did I have the opportunity to do a whole lot of it with fresh cases. We were very good or very lucky in that most of our recent stuff was cleared pretty quickly, so there wasn't much need for me, but a lot of the stuff I had was back in the 70s and even earlier.
Did you solve a bunch of them?
We solved some, yes. Not near as many as we would have liked.
You think DNA today would have helped, would get more of them?
Yeah, in many of those cases. A lot of times, some evidence wasn't preserved properly. It's 20, 30 years old.
Yeah, they didn't know, all right.
But in those instances where we're lucky and we do find something, we've had very good luck with the DNA. I was promoted to corporal. I led the patrol unit, mostly in Bethlehem, Honesdale, and Gibson. I was also a part-time tactical mounted unit rider. That was probably my favorite part of the job. Nothing like doing stuff on horseback. I got to go all over the country doing it. I supervised the ceremonial unit, which is our honor guard. I traveled all over the country doing that too, because we attended funerals for state police officers and troopers in other states that were killed in the line of duty. Unfortunately, we didn't have a budget to go do a local officers, but if it was a state agency, we went. I've been to Texas, I've been to Washington, Oregon, Maine. Very somber but yet rewarding part of my job. I was promoted to sergeant after that, where I took over the staff services section at the State Police Academy. Staff services section, I pretty much supervised all the civilian employees. I had the mechanical unit, so I was responsible for the fleet. About 50 training cars, the kitchen, maintenance, custodial, grounds, all that good stuff.
At Hershey?
At Hershey. That's what.
Is that how you ended up down here?
That's how I ended up down here.
Let me ask you something, Mike. Were you at that Eric Fiend thing?
Which
Fine
one?
thing. That
Yes.
You participated in that looking for him this year?
I did.
Wow.
The first couple of days was nasty because it was very disorganized. Slept in the car.
He hid good though. He hid it out good, didn't he?
He did a good job.
It's because he had stashes everywhere.
It
Planned it so he had everything what he needs.
it was well thought out and well planned. And I wish it didn't take as long as it did, but at the end of the day, I think we did a pretty good job. We got him. He didn't hurt anybody else.
Why did he ever do that crap? Not that it mattered. I mean,
I don't think he ever really gave us a reason other than he was unhappy with authority and he wanted to start some sort of
militia.
Yeah, he wanted some attention. He thought maybe that would spark other people into some civil disobedience, and it just never panned out for him.
Well, he's paying for it now.
Yes, he is. I went up to Montoursville for a little while, and then over to the Gaming Enforcement Administrative Offices in Harrisburg, and I was only there about 3 months or so before I retired in September of 16. And then
Is that for the casino?
yeah, but I was in the admin, I wasn't in the casino. I was overseeing
Well, they're
parts of all of
stationed
them.
in the casino.
They are, but we also have an administrative office in Harrisburg. I took,
They just do the background checks and stuff.
that's a big part of it. All the background checks come through the admin offices, thousands and thousands of fingerprint cards. All the intelligence work we do following criminal gang activity and a lot of foreign gang activity in the casinos, a lot of money laundering, bigger stuff that you never really hear about. Most of that got funneled through admin offices and the investigators there. I took about 4 weeks off after retirement before I started work at Northern Lebanon, which would have been in October of 16. May of 17, I attended the NASRO basic course. NASRO is the National Association of School Resource Officers. They pretty much dictate how things should be done by school resource officers throughout the country. They even have a worldwide footprint in some respects. They are considered the leading authority on how school resource officers should behave, conduct themselves, what we should do and what we shouldn't do. They're the organization that kind of lays down those standards. We're under no obligation to follow them, but we do it voluntarily. And I was a big advocate of following NASRO guidelines because they've been doing it for a long time. They have such a big footprint. All their research is really solid. Plus they have a lot of legal experts on their team to make sure we're compliant.
Mike, what's your title? You're mentioning resource officer, but up there it looks like police officer. Are you, is it an NL school district police officer or resource officer?
That's a very, very good question, and there is a significant but yet subtle difference. A school resource officer, by definition, by the definition provided by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I can't speak for any place else. A school resource officer would be a police officer employed by a municipality whose duty assignment is the school. So if Bethel Township had a police department, and I was a Bethel Township officer assigned specifically to Northern Lebanon High School, I would be a resource officer.
But you're in no way bound by the administration or the school board.
I am.
He can be reprimanded by
Yeah.
the administration and the school board.
I would think so.
Employed by the
He is
school
employed
district.
by the
And-
He's
district.
not
and
employed
that-
by a police barracks or
Yeah,
any
so
sort.
he is not employed by the state police department of Jonestown, which is
Right.
where Jonestown does, which is typically how most resource officers roll in the state of Pennsylvania. So he is a school district employee, employed by the district, taxpayer money but from school taxes, and is bound by all administration. He answers to them.
And that would be the difference between a school police officer, which is what I am, and a school resource officer. A resource officer would be a local officer employed by a municipality, whereas I am a police officer employed by the school district.
And he's retired
Yes.
police officer versus active duty
Yes.
police officer.
However,
It's semantics.
it is semantics, but it actually could make a significant difference in certain circumstances.
Yes.
So I'm not employed by a township or the state, I'm employed by the school. Now, what the program or the process rather that we had to go through was apply to the County Court of Common Pleas for police authority under the school code, which provides for that authority. Now you have a couple different options, which I won't get into those a whole lot, but when we applied for police authority to the county court, we applied for full police power, meaning I have the power of arrest, and by definition, it would be identical to the local police department who would ordinarily cover your jurisdiction. So I have power and authority equal to that of the state police at the Jonestown barracks. So I have felony, misdemeanor, and summary arrest powers. Some school districts opt to restrict the powers to just summary offenses. I'm not sure of anyone locally who does that. The resource or the police officers that I talk to, we're all pretty similar. And I think all the district solicitors talk, and they all kind of do the same thing on purpose. Especially when you're in the same county, it kind of keeps everything a little bit easier to keep track of. And I know Elko, he's also a retired trooper just like I am. And the school code kind of specifies that in order to receive the police power, the authority, I don't want to say I'm positive, but I think you have to be a retired trooper. I'm not sure if there's another method to achieve.
For the NASRO?
No.
So, for the school code.
And that would be out of the school code, section 7, whatever.
But now, can anyone get approved for the NASRO?
Well, there's associate memberships.
Oh, okay.
Mine's a professional membership.
Now, you're strictly for the children, or you for children and adults in the school?
Oh, whatever happens, happens, I take it all.
Because they did violate state law, Mike, with the obscene material.
Yeah, and there's been that's been the subject of some conversation, I'll say.
They need to be held
So
accountable.
if that's happening and you report to the administration, do you have authority to arrest the administration?
I
He
suppose,
does.
Would it not be a conflict of interest, though?
I would think it would be. I would
So-
think it
But you
would
could
be.
deputize me, and I could do a citizen's
But-
arrest,
You
Mike.
could just call the state barracks and have them come in and do
And
it.
I'll talk about that in just a second, because that's exactly what would happen, and that's exactly what did happen on several occasions.
Because I will make an arrest on them.
I'm certain of that. We do have a memorandum of understanding with the Jonestown State Police Barracks. We renew it every 2 years. It was just renewed in June of 2017, and we'll be looking to do that again come June of 19. Basically, what it does is it lays out cooperation between the school district and whatever police department would ordinarily cover that area. In our case, it's PSP. Information sharing and things of that nature. There's also some enumerated offenses that if they were to be committed on campus, we do have an obligation to notify the local police authority. People go back and forth whether or not that's me or Jonestown. I don't know that there's an answer to the question until the court would make a decision if it was presented to them, or perhaps there is a decision out there and we're just all debating something that's already been solved. In our particular district, I don't think it's a real significant issue because I have a really good working relationship with the guys down at Jonestown, and there's not a whole lot that happens in the school that in one way or another they don't know about or I don't tell them about. And I've referred numerous cases to them already, most of them because of a real or perceived conflict of interest, and 9 times out of 10 that would be the reason I turn something over to them. There's also occasions where they're very technical investigations. A lot of those are the social media ones that require search warrants, and they require certain documents to be filed with companies to hold information and not delete it from their servers. And it's a long, drawn-out process, and more often than not, I don't have a whole lot of time to get involved that deeply with the case. That would be the other instance in which we turn stuff over. I think the biggest example of turning stuff over to PSP was that hazing incident, or alleged hazing incident. That was the one that called a lot of stuff into question, I suppose, and I think.
Yeah, because
Well,
why
Mike,
did they
we-
turn that over to the police when they didn't turn over the investigation of the administrator?
Right, we had to get it out there, Mike, that way, because no one was doing anything.
And I'm okay with whatever, because when I became aware of it, I reported it and I turned it over. So I'm good.
Right,
You know,
they didn't.
I sleep fine at night because I did the right thing. There's people that argue that I never should have turned it over. I would disagree with that. I think turning it over was the proper thing to do for 100 reasons. Conflict of interest is only one of them.
So a question for you, when you have PSP come into working relationship with them, you're not ever ushering them out of the school.
You mean telling them that they're not allowed?
Yeah.
I have absolutely never. And I have no intentions of it.
Right, but that doesn't, like, the memorandum between, is it between you and PSP, or is it between the school
The school
understanding
district.
the resource officer, police officer, understanding that piece, and PSP? So it would be inappropriate to usher police officers out of the school, because they were coming in to look at something. That would be something that would be inappropriate, that you're saying possibly while you were around, you have not been aware of anything like that. Like, that's an inappropriate
The only
behavior.
thing I can tell you is I have done no such thing. You know, it's, when you're dealing with police officers versus administration, interacting with kids, there's a lot of nuances.
Who overrides it? Like, who, once the state police are involved in a situation at the school, then is that when you sit back, or you join with them and do the investigation with them, and then the administration has to take a side back, or who's in control?
They are,
The administration?
I will tell you that there's one time I went to the state police and overrode the school resource officer, and they wouldn't do anything until they checked to see if he opened an investigation.
yeah, because that would be silly to have two of us doing it at the same time.
But is the administration in charge still? They can put the state police out then, or?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know why they would.
Well, I mean,
Well, if it was on
We
them,
don't know
I
why
could
they would do a lot of
question
things.
The only reason I could suspect administration may do something like that is because there's an issue in local parentis where parents have to be present when you're interviewing kids, and if they're not, you know, there may be issues where administration wouldn't want police talking to kids, which, that's no different with me though. So I would be, I would not be able to talk to a child just like PSP wouldn't when there's Miranda rights involved. So I mean, there are circumstances where I could potentially see such a thing happening. I'm not aware of any, and I have never done it.
But you're more of, like, it's not more of the disciplinary pieces. So, like, if a threat or perceived threat was given to any student via text or anything, and it was brought to administration's, brought to their attention, and administration did their piece of investigation, and still, even though the threat, it was a viable threat, meaning it was on paper, in writing, or something of that nature, and was a threat to another student, it's against their policy, but the administration go ahead and did all of their stuff and felt that it was just a joking incident or a misunderstanding. So that's something that you wouldn't necessarily be aware of. Is that what I'm understanding?
I would think the potential for me not to be aware is there, but I honestly don't know, and I honestly can't speak for administration and.
I'm just trying to figure out where the where the balance is, where the line is. So is it more?
I've already called him and spoke to him to open up something.
I think those lines nationwide are probably still a little bit blurry
Okay.
as the role of the school resource officer, police officer expands, and, you know, threats within school buildings, you know, it's different now, and I would be remiss to say that it's black and white, or
Right.
it's probably still very gray, and I think it will be for a while. And what I don't want to do is go off on the tangents about, you know, specific or particular cases,
Oh,
especially.
no, I was just trying to figure out what the line,
Yeah,
like
it's-
where that is, where that generalized line is. Is it something that more after administration has kind of looked through it and looked over it, or if it's brought to you originally? Because I would assume in the hierarchy of how the school district is run, that it would go in administration and the, whatever, his
Dean of
lovely
student?
yeah, thank you. The dean of student or the disciplinarian, he would be the person that would get 90% of the stuff that's going on, because it needs vetted and redone, and I get that.
Mhm.
But I was just trying to figure out, like, where is it that you then get brought into the fold? Like, are you left out of the fold,
No.
90% of that stuff, until it gets to be something more major, or are you abreast of stuff and then you get to decide yes or no?
Well, there's been instances of threats made where I was brought into it. Now, what I can tell you, and this is kind of a twofold answer, and it's very good news, in my opinion, but we're in the process now, and we've been for a long time, working on many projects, but two of them directly relate to the question that you're asking. The first thing we're working on is a school threat assessment team and a policy to go with it. When we do assemble the school threat assessment team, it will be comprised of members including, social workers, counselors, school administration, me.
I
and
volunteer
various-
too, I could, community member.
If there's gonna be opportunities for that, yes.
Okay, all right.
But the threat assessment team in particular will be comprised of those folks that I just mentioned. And there will be a very specific protocol and policy to follow to vet these threats.
I have one question for you. Say a threat's made on a student's life, right?
Mhm.
Over YouTube, whatever. And what would the procedure be for that?
It generalized. We're
That they're
not
coming to
talking about,
school,
like-
they're gonna come to the school and shoot the kid, and they name a kid, whatever.
Well, we've had instances where threats just like that were made. In fact, there was one that was made prior to the first day of school. And that one, we wound up working directly with PSP. And what they'll do is, if it's not during the school day, we'll give it to them and they'll go out to the house. We
Well,
don't-
would they contact the victim's parents too then?
I don't know.
Because I
would expect so.
I had something like that happen to my daughter at Jonestown.
Mhm.
A little kid in 5th grade, whatever grade he's in, made a threat towards my daughter. An email was blasted out to everybody saying there's been an isolated situation, law enforcement was called, and it's been dealt with.
Mhm.
No one is in danger. I've never gotten a call. Police never got a hold of us. Now, if the police were called or contacted, why ain't, my daughter's you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
I mean.
I do. And I don't have answers.
Right.
What I can tell you is that we're working toward
Fixing all the problems.
Yes, and
I get it.
we're cognizant of the fact that there's problems.
I mean, I appreciate they stopped it or whatever they did, but
Mhm.
for nobody to,
For the loop not to be.
right, yeah.
Bad communication, and you know what? I don't deny that there's communication problems.
Sure, it's
And
everywhere.
I think there's a lot of significant problems. And I think what we're doing now is we're opening up.
We just want honesty.
I have like projects going on 5 different fronts right now. And what's happening is I'm getting buried, I can't keep up with what I have, and I'm starting to drown.
Give me a call, I'll come in and help you.
That threat assessment team is one policy and procedure that we're looking at, and the threat assessment team is significant, and we're modeling ours after tried and true processes that have already been established in other parts of the country.
But shouldn't every threat be taken seriously?
They are taken seriously, but not every threat is a serious threat.
Which is
There's,
why you need a procedure in order to follow
that's
it.
exactly it. And what it does is it details very specific procedures that we follow to determine whether or not the threat is viable or credible.
Like different levels or different colors or
I
something.
mean, some people just spout off and say stuff that they're never, I threaten to kill my kids all the time. It's not a real threat.
But showing a gun and dry cocking, it's a real threat.
There's a lot of things that can be a real threat.
Well, we did have 2 of those instances last year.
Putting words into and giving it to special ed kids and saying that you're gonna beat them up, that's a viable threat. I guess because the procedure needs to be put into place to kind of help guide what the pieces are, because not each threat is the same.
Right.
And so you need to be able to take those pieces that are together, and I understand that. It just is, it's kind of, instead of being proactive, we are now being reactive in trying to do that. So we've had quite a few of these in the last year and a half to 2 years of threats of different kinds, to different types and kinds and colors and ethnic backgrounds of all kinds of people within the school, mental and physical. And it just kind of is more, I can appreciate that it is working towards there.
Mm-hmm.
But we've had all of these things already in this accordion style. While we can all appreciate, I think, that not everything can be handled in the same way, a policy put into place kind of holds you to what needs to happen to that.
Yeah, but we know they violate policies and break them all the time, so.
And the procedure then kind of also helps for the community to understand as well, this is the procedure that they're going to be following when
Mhm.
stuff like this happens. And I think why it is very reactive, it's not proactive. Like, we're trying to be proactive for what may come down the line, but we've had all of this already. And it's, quite frankly, not been handled appropriately in many of those in those situations.
We certainly understand that what we are doing now is reactive to what happened in the past. I think there's a lot to be learned from it, though. And I think the fact that we are openly moving forward with creating some policies and procedures to address these things is going to be a really cool thing when it's done. It's a very slow process. I feel like we're slogging along at a disgustingly slow pace, but it's the best we can do. We are spread and we are stretched very thin.
Now, are you guys looking at the Sandy Hook programming and things of that nature that have been put out in regards to how to help structure those things and what you saw?
Yes, we have.
That was just put out, what, this week?
No, the Sandy Hook stuff?
No, there was something like, I don't know.
There's always stuff coming
Yeah,
out.
but it was, I just seen it in the news this morning.
Probably because it's on the 14th.
What I can tell you is that Brad Reist, myself, Toriel from Jonestown, Allie, the social worker, and Kristen Schaefer at the middle school, we all attended a threat assessment team seminar that was sponsored by the intermediate unit. About a month ago we attended, but it's a several-part seminar. The next phase is happening in early January. And we're kind of using what these folks give us and the IU gives us to model our threat assessment team. And it won't be very long where we will have a policy, and it'll be very specific, and it'll have very specific team members. Everybody will have different talents and they will bring something to the table when we do assess these threats and determine whether or not they're actionable on our part. And there will be a very specific template to follow, very specific questions that need answers before we arrive at these conclusions. And the other neat thing about the threat assessment team is not only does it bring us to the point of making that determination, but it also provides for follow-up afterwards based on the seriousness of the level or the actionability of the threat. So just because we say, okay, we determine that it's not a real credible threat, we just don't pat them on the butt and send them back to class and never talk to them again. There will be periodic check-ins and contact with the parents, and it's going to be an ongoing process. Because what we've learned, and I'm not saying at Northern Lebanon, but what we've learned as public schools across the country is that what you learn about a kid now may very well manifest itself in 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So the whole goal, and this is why it's taking so long, because we have to get it right. But we want to identify those that need identified early on, and we want to stay with them throughout their school.
That's totally different than the bullying stuff, or does that kind of fall underneath it?
Some of it may overlap.
Okay.
Now, going back to the Sandy Hook thing, I don't know if you're referencing the Safe to Say program that we're instituting now.
Well, that's part of the statewide
Right.
mandate.
And then some of that came from Sandy Hook and lessons learned at Sandy Hook, and that's why I was asking that question. But that's another thing we're doing, and we just received some state training on that. We have a little bit more coming up. And it's safe to say we'll go live on January the 14th, provided nothing breaks down or hiccups between now and then. But what the Safe to Say program is, basically it provides a means for the community, whether it be staff, parents, students, whatever, to provide information to a tip line through the Office of the Attorney General. Those tip lines will be staffed 24/7. I think they have 10 people hired to do it. And then when they receive credible threats, and then they will filter to a certain degree at their level. I'm not sure how much, because you don't want to risk not passing on something that you should. But then they are mandated to reach out to both the school district contacts and the local police. I think it's me, Brad, Mrs. Klein, the high school guidance counselor. We would be the three contacts, because
So
we
they
had
do
to.
it in many different ways. It's done via email and telephone call and a text message.
Right, and through phone apps.
Yes.
So it's a really cool system in that regard. And then, of course, when we receive the threats from the tip line, the threat assessment team gets activated, and we will follow that process to the end and perhaps years beyond.
And when you receive the things that maybe are not actionable, maybe a pattern, showing a pattern versus something with that student, but showing a pattern due to climate or how things are kind of moving within the school or those kinds of things. What is the procedure gonna look like then for that? Are we just gonna, like, are you gonna be able to have that documentation to show that there was a pattern? Are we gonna be doing assemblies? Are we gonna be re-teaching some things?
I'm sure that the patterns will probably be noticeable, and that is one of the purposes of the threat assessment team purposefully being diverse, because I certainly couldn't tell you what to do for issues that don't involve law enforcement matters. Whereas a guidance counselor, the school psychologist, or social worker may be better apt to make those decisions. That's why purposefully the team is going to be diverse. To specifically answer your question, I don't know. We're still in the process of putting the whole thing together.
Is that something that you guys are thinking about putting into that kind of procedure type of thing? That shows that,
It is.
like that looking at that piece of that ebb and flow to kind of see maybe it's an educational piece that needs to happen versus a complete reprimand. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, no, I
looking
get it
at those
completely.
pieces to see how to then we're looking at being proactive there, to kind of help. Okay, well, when they come up in 7th grade, we have all these 7th graders acting like wackadoos, and they need to be brought back down to earth about how we need to behave. And do you know what I mean?
I do.
Kind of getting that
And
into the procedure as well.
I will go off on a whole separate tangent on this. When Dr. Bensel first came to the district, we had some complaints from parents and students on the bullying issue. Dr. Bensel had asked me and Ally Gosh to form, and I hate using these words, but I'll use them because I have nothing else. He wanted us to form an anti-bullying committee to look at solutions to the problem. Basically, he said, I want you two to get a bunch more people, and I want you to find us a program that's going to help solve or fix this issue that we have.
The biggest issue is the principal's bullying, certain principal, a female.
What I did,
Should
and
do.
Ally did, and I don't want to talk about that stuff.
I understand.
I want to keep this.
I know, but right is right, wrong is wrong, Mike, and we know who the problem is, but anyway, go ahead.
Thanks. Ally and I got a couple other faculty members involved, to include guidance counselor at the middle school, Kristen, and we started having regular meetings to address the bullying problem. And what we would do is we would set the agenda for the meeting, and we would all leave the meeting, go our separate ways, do research on whatever topic we were assigned by each other, and then we'd reconvene. What did you learn? What did you learn? What did you learn? And we started out by investigating different programs that were available to address bullying. And there's no shortage of books, there's no shortage of videos, there's no shortage of public speakers on the matter. You can't swing a dead cat without hitting somebody who will get up on stage, pass out rubber bracelets, tell kids to give hugs and not get angry with each other and leave. For 5 or 6.
Doesn't work outside of your own home.
No. So when we got back, we all threw our cards on the table. This is what I found, this is what I found, this is what I found. And we all kind of looked at each other and said, these are like once and done programs. Some of the ones that claim to last longer, they give you posters and stuff to hang on the wall. So we started discussing whether or not any of them was worth it. And through our conversations, what we realized was our problem is a lot deeper. That we have a very significant school culture and school climate problem. Horribly significant problem. And we all agreed that no matter what we did, no matter how much money we paid to give people to come in and speak, we're not fixing it. It's going to be a once and done, and then Monday morning it's going to be business as usual. And we started.
So what ideas did you guys come up with to fix it?
Well, we started talking a lot about what we saw.
Whatever Kristen was doing in middle school with the 9th graders, because they've got to be the worst big class.
It's the worst class I've ever seen, going back to my 9th grade.
And it's been like that since kindergarten. I honestly have to tell you that.
I've heard.
Kindergarten, okay?
I've heard.
Whatever she was doing, whoever took that power away from her, from doing whatever she was doing in 6th and 7th grade,
We know who took
had
that.
to be crazy. Because she had that class workable
Yeah.
You know
and
who took it away.
controlled. And something happened in 8th grade and she wasn't allowed to do
When was
whatever
8th
she
grade?
was
Last
doing.
year?
Yes.
Imagine that.
Whatever she was doing, she wasn't allowed to do it anymore.
Well, I can't speak because
But I'm just telling you what was working.
but she never told me that she was told not to do anything either. So
Well, she told me.
anyway,
Privately, she told me that she wasn't allowed to do it anymore, that it was too time consuming.
yeah, I don't know. She has so many different programs going on because she works her tail off. She really does, and she's just like the rest of us. There's no room to breathe and you
And
start.
have the 9th grade classes back to doing.
Well, you start falling behind. And when you start
Thing.
falling behind, you never catch up. It just gets worse. It's like going into debt. And that's what's happening to some of us at the school. I don't see the light of day. And it's getting worse, not better.
And now you got the whole racial problem going on in school.
And I will address that too. Let me back up a little
Okay,
bit.
I'm sorry.
What we did was we agreed that we had a very significant problem that was not going to be solved by having lectures in the auditorium. We didn't know what we could do to address it, so we went out, we did our own research, and we reconvened again. We came back to the table with an organization based out of New York, I'm not going to say New York City, but New York, called the National School Climate Center. National School Climate Center has done work all over the country addressing the very specific issue of school culture and school climate. We had some, I'm wanting to say Title IV money. There's so many titles out there, I get them confused, so if I'm wrong, I apologize. But we had grant money that we were able to spend to contract with the National School Climate Center. That's exactly what we did. We contracted with them. I forgot what we paid, but basically we bought 10 months worth of their service. The first thing that they did when they came on board was kind of ruined by the monsoon that we had, but they were supposed to do that presentation in the cafeteria at the high school. That's who those folks were. Now we've progressed to the point, because we have monthly teleconferences with these guys, and what we are in the process of doing, well, let me back up. While we contracted the National School Climate Center, unbeknownst to us at Northern Lebanon, the IU also contracted the National School Climate Center. So one day people were making phone calls and somebody said, yeah, we got the School Climate Center. And they're like, holy crap, so do we. Well, let's do something together. Let's pilot something. So that's what we're doing, and the school, meaning me, Brad, Ally, and a couple other administrators, just last week had a meeting with representatives from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, from the IU, and from the National School Climate Center. And we all sat in the Lincoln Room and tried to come up with a plan, a very specific plan on how to move forward. One of the first things on the table is rewriting the school district's anti-bullying policy. Our bullying policy is woefully inadequate, but it's also the same policy that was prescribed by the Pennsylvania School Boards Association years ago. Now, since that time, the Pennsylvania School Boards Association has rewritten the bullying policy, and every school district in the Commonwealth adopts the policy written by the School Board Association because they're legally sound.
In some part.
I mean, you're always,
Some part, they have it in their policy.
right, we're always able to tailor it to specifically fit our school, but the outline, the very foundation of the policy is always from the School Boards Association.
So when is the policy changing?
Well, some of this
Because
may,
you're working on it now.
yeah, and some of this may be my fault and some of it not, because I don't come from the educational environment, so sometimes I learn things the hard way. And I sat down the end of last school year and I wrote a brand new bullying policy from scratch. And my policy also included procedure for investigating complaints of bullying. We got permission to move forward with that policy, because it has to go to the school board, then it has to go through 2 meetings, and then it gets ratified and approved. In that time, it was just last month or so, the National School Climate Center asked for a copy of the policy that I had written. And this policy had already gone through our legal department. So whatever law firm represents the district, KK, I don't know.
KK, Kale and,
Keelan and,
Klein and all them.
but they have a guy that does nothing but policy. So he reviewed it, he suggested some changes, we made the changes, we sent it back, he sent it to us. Well, everything looks good except I want you should do this and this, so we fixed that. And this takes months. So we finally got to the point where we're ready to present it to the school board. Then the National School Climate Center asked for a copy, and they said, we're not happy with this. Don't move forward on it until we talk.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
No, that's all right.
She has
Gotta go
to.
one basketball.
what's up, George? How you doing?
Let's go. Go ahead.
I didn't know you kids were here.
Lisa. Lisa.
I'll bring it back up.
Okay, you good?
Hey, not to change subject, but you know Mel B from Spice Girls got her hand cut off.
That's not our job.
What?
Yeah, I've been reading it. Breaking news.
So the National School Climate just did that like last month or whatever.
Last
said
month,
that they're not
they-
happy with it.
Right, and
Did
they
they
said,
tell you what they weren't happy with?
yes. They
Are
said,
you at liberty to state?
sure, I'll tell you. They said that because I had combined procedure with policy, they said that's not a good idea. And she was spot on. And the problem that we have is changing policy. So if something in our procedure needs changed, it could take months and months and months to change it. She said, you have to separate policy from procedure. I sat down, I went, never even occurred to me. I said, but you're absolutely right. Because if something happens and we have to change something procedurally, we have to change the whole policy, and that's very cumbersome. Obviously, I mean, it takes months and months and months to get that done. So as we speak, we are splitting the two and we are separating policy from procedure. As we separate policy from procedure, we discover other problems. Where do we put the procedure? We have a student handbook, we have teacher handbooks, we have all these different, now we need someplace to put yet another procedure, so we have some organizational, and I'm talking overarching organizational issues that I think need addressed. I'm not a school administrator. From my perspective, I mean, when I used to work, we had an operations and administrative manual. Yeah, I had something to turn to when I had a question on how to do something, and it was all in one place. You know, it was a big ass thick, you know, it was a pain in the ass, but you know what? Everything was in it. So that's what we're doing. We're separating policy from procedure. When policy and procedure is separated, then we will present the new policy to the board for approval. They will probably have to approve the procedure as well. So that's where we are with that. We also have a school climate survey forthcoming. That's probably going to be March. That is a survey designed by and used by the PA Department of Ed.
Is that already done and that's just being presented in March? Or
No,
that's
no,
gonna
the
be
survey will be
taken in
conducted in
March?
March.
So all the
yes.
parents, students, or
It's going to involve everybody.
it's not gonna be like that campus survey, right?
No.
Where they twist everything.
No, it's not going to, I'm not agreeing that they twist, I'm just saying it's not going to be like that.
Well,
And this survey is actually written by the Department of Ed. Now, we do have the opportunity to add some questions to it if we want to, specific to our district. But according to the folks from the Department of Ed who have been doing these surveys for a long time, they said there's a tremendous amount of good data that can be gleaned from it. This is where you start to lose me as the cop, because whatever. But in order to address our school culture and school climate issues, we have to figure out exactly what they are. The first step, according to the School Climate Center, the IU, and the Department of Ed, is to move forward with the survey, which we do have tentatively planned for March.
Are we-
That's not out there yet, but that's the plan.
Are
And
we
you're-
still having daily fights in the school?
No, it's kind of ebbed a little bit.
since when?
And is there more observation during the lunch when you have the majority of the
The
population?
ninth grade lunch?
together?
Yeah, there's like
No,
10 of us in there.
all the lunches.
Well, all the lunches.
And
because
are
that is the hot
the
spot.
staff actually paying attention or are they watching their phones?
Well, I've been going to 6A lunch myself.
I've been told it's a fight club, that teachers are betting on things. I can't, you know, I've seen it, it's terrible.
I'm just wondering, like, have you,
He was there today, I can tell you that I was told.
lunch is always a big problem.
Mhm.
And you probably are not aware of this because I'm sure it's not been forthcoming to you, but in June, pretty sure I sent an entire email full of like 10 suggestions, to include 3 or 4 of them that had to do with lunchrooms before any of this even started, because I had done my research in some of the other districts outside of this county, because I do have family outside of this county to where my family had been experiencing those issues in lunchrooms. And some of the ways in which they curb them, I gave those suggestions as well. Have you guys looked at any of the other, I'm sure you've probably contacted some of your other resource officers throughout the other counties to kind of see, because lunch is that piece.
Mhm.
When I went to school, we didn't have that issue because there was a senior lunch and there was a junior lunch and there was a 9-10 lunch. Like, you did not intermix, we didn't intermix those. And middle school was out in middle, like, you didn't have that kind of stuff. So I'm just wondering, like, one, we have an issue with the trust and validation and everything that's going on as far as administration pieces and how students and parents and staff feel in regards to some past things that have happened. And that has tarnished a lot of stuff that is going on. Trust is can be taken away very quickly and very difficult to earn back. So, you have that piece. And then you have the piece of where if those students are, like, lunch is supposed to be laid back, you're supposed to be able to chill, you're supposed to be able to kind of do whatever, provided you can behave. But there still should be those parameters there. And I know that we've been kind of lax in what kids can and can't do. I know in the middle school, I can speak specifically to that because I've seen that, is teachers are at the doors. That cafeteria is quite smaller than the high school, so it's a little bit easier to look to see what's going on, but still there are things that can occur there, typical lunchroom things, that maybe if we looked at it from outside of the box. So that's why I'm wondering, have you guys looked at it that way to kind of see, because the lunchroom is the problem in most cases because they're not as while there might be 10 people in there now, that's 10 to what, 70 kids in a lunchroom? So you're not all gonna catch everything. You might see something that somebody else is not gonna see because of their training and background, to where you have a sub in there or something else. Is it beneficial to add aides in there specifically, so that they're in there specifically? I know it's kind of elementary, but behavior is elementary.
Palmyra has,
Specific lunchroom aides, and they
Yeah.
could care less if they hurt your feelings or not.
that's their job. And
Right.
And I know that because I'm very good friends with the guy who does it in the middle school. He's a lunchroom, he's a
I'm
big
just
dude
wondering,
too.
like,
Nobody's messing
Have
with
we
him.
looked at that kind of thing?
No, I have not been involved in anything like that,
Okay.
nor would I be. That's way outside the scope of my responsibility, so
Okay,
if there have been discussions, I don't know.
okay.
But
And I
when
wouldn't-
suggestions are made, they're ignored too, so.
That's
I
because
know I
they,
threw some suggestions out there and. was
Jennifer
told-
Hassler and them have all the answers, so they don't
No,
need your
actually,
suggestions.
it wasn't her that I talked to.
I'm just trying to figure out what we've looked at.
Mhm.
I've given suggestions, other parents have given suggestions.
Yeah,
There are
and I don't
other
know what
parents-
they've looked at. What I do know is I have increased my presence in the lunchroom and in the hallway after lunch, between classes, that auditorium hallway there where we seem to have a lot of problems. And I usually have somebody with me. I'll get Mr. Reese and we'll go for a walk together. Because we've increased our bathroom patrols too. We've been walking laps a whole lot more frequently, checking bathrooms because of the vaping and juuling issues. So administrative presence in the cafeteria and hallways has increased significantly just in the last several weeks.
And
that
are you
I'm-
finding that is minimizing some of these that are
I
happening?
don't know, I think it'll take a little bit longer to make that determination. I do see problems in the cafeteria, because if the teachers don't stand at the door, when they turn their back, kids sneak out. You're supposed to ask permission or sign up to go to the bathroom. And I see kids at the table and they're waiting, just waiting for Mr. Berdinka to turn his back or to talk to a kid. And as soon as he goes to a table, they bolt. And that's something that needs controlled, and that's something that I would suggest, and this is just my personal opinion, that would need significant parental support. Because
But
You
that's
need
not
to
where the
have
fights are happening.
You need
out
to
in
have a
the
staff
hallway.
No, they
member
don't.
right outside the
Well,
door.
they're also happening within the
No,
lunchroom.
what
I
you
know
need
they
to
are.
do is what you do with autistic kids, and you stick the little thing up there, and all the doors are closed, and as soon as it's breached, there's an alarm that goes off. Because we all know, kids will be kids, they're gonna look for loopholes, they're gonna figure out where they can go and do stuff, and that's fine. And we're not saying that it's the end-all be-all, but
make
like,
it harder for them.
in the middle school, if the cafeteria doors were shut, you would have a really hard time sneaking out of the cafeteria doors with teachers. Do you know what I mean? 'Cause
Yeah.
I've seen in middle school, I mean, my own kid has walked right out of the and I'm like, what are you doing?
Yep.
Well, you're here. No, a kid. So, I mean, I get it and I can appreciate that, but there needs to be something. You need to close the doors need to be locked. Something, we need to figure out something.
My
because-
biggest thing is I
Are
think
they allowed to lock them for fire code?
I don't think so.
I don't think they'd be locked, but
No, it would be.
But a buzzer system on the top would go.
I'm
Yeah.
sure the panic, whatever, would still function, but I think, and this, again, this is my personal opinion, I don't want anybody to think it reflects the opinion of the district or the admin or anybody else. But I think consequences, and consequences sometimes are hard to get, because I've noticed that the issuance of consequences typically creates a battle with parents. So consequences don't always equate to consequences.
Consequences would be okay if consequences were consistent across the
There you go.
board.
That would be a
And
start.
no favoritism paid where it does appear that there is some favoritism from the administration to certain
Or,
students. But if it was consistent
if it
across
was
the board,
consistent.
that would, consequences would have it, because the first guy, you probably go through 5 to 10 people getting consistent consequence, and then word will get around, okay, I'm gonna get this if I do this, is it worth it?
We are working toward exactly that, and we've taken 2 steps in that direction. The first step was the beginning of last school year. We rewrote both student handbooks, so the consequences were a little bit better defined, because we had some issues where there was a lot of gray. And then we combined both handbooks, middle school and high school, to eliminate a whole bunch more confusion.
Well, you had to, because you put the campus in
I
effect.
I
I know you
think that-
did, but they
Administration
did.
did.
I think too, what if you looked at, one of my favorite movies is The Santa Claus, but if you would look at consequences of that nature, if you recall watching that movie, is that woman was principal and she was a hard ass. And the consequences were not detention during school day, it was after school, it was on a weekend,
We had
it
discussed that.
was cleaning lockers, scrubbing bathrooms. It was things that, like, my kids are not angels.
Mhm.
They're not. They can be pains in the butts. My oldest one spitballed an entire elementary school bathroom. And then they were gonna have the janitor clean it. And I refused. Absolutely not. He will go in there and clean it off himself. You think it's funny? You can clean it. But, and I get that you don't have parents who necessarily back that way or go that direction. However, if you make it to where it is an inconvenience
Mhm.
for the parent and the child, the kids still get to go and do whatever they want.
Mhm.
They still get to go out on a weekend, because let's face it, nobody is as mean and nasty as I am, except for maybe these guys, they probably
Oh,
are
I don't
mean
know,
and
I'm
nasty.
not quite
you're
as
right.
mean and nasty.
I already told
misunderstood,
Mr.
that's all.
I already
Well,
told
and it's
Mr.
not
Weiner
mean
to
and
have my
nasty,
son.
meaning like I gladly wear a mean mom thing, because you know what, my kids are respectful, they respect authority, and irregardless of what is being done to them, whether it's just or unjust, they know darn well that provided that they did what they were supposed to do, and it is unjust or just, I will support them in whatever way it needs to be. But if you're getting in trouble at school, what they can do to you at school is nothing that I can do to you at home. I will take everything. And while I understand that that is not necessarily the parenting climate that we have in this entire universe, it is something that, why aren't we looking at those pieces? Why aren't we looking at beautifying your own school and taking ownership into that when you have misbehaved?
When my middle schooler at the time got ISS, I asked them, have them follow the janitor around and clean up.
Mhm.
I said they wouldn't do it, but I
That could be
personally
deemed as
backed
cor-
that. And
That could be
was-
like corporal punishment, though.
No, it's not, because.
Well, I
school
know
kids
it's not, but
learn
some
in
people
ISS,
say it
they
is,
learn
you know?
absolutely nothing,
Actually, they
except for
get
the
to do
grade.
their own work and everything nowadays.
Here's the
Actually, in
interesting.
ISS, my kid was surfing porn.
Exactly.
in ISS, so ISS, they are not being monitored. There is no content filter.
Listen.
With my older
There is.
son proved these last 2 weeks.
They're just
Shit.
inadequate.
You're supposed to,
They are
you're supposed to
inadequate.
keep that
And we have
stuff to
two
yourself,
separate firewalls, but yet they breach them.
Do
Well,
it.
my son,
Firewalls are okay. Content filter is what you need.
We have those too.
oh, yeah, we don't even wanna talk about that, because we all know my 11th grader is blackballed.
I had kids buying and selling, we'll say, stuff on the black web or the dark web or whatever, the first year I was in the district, in the cafeteria, bypassing our filters. And you know what? We can filter whatever we
What
want.
were they selling?
The kids jump on their cell using cellular service and just avoid filters
What
altogether.
filter do you guys use?
Tom McGee could answer that, but I know he has several.
'Cause
I can
I know
tell
you can get some free ones from.
Mike, are we looking at any cameras or anything?
Now, let me back up and address
Hold on.
your question.
Address
or-
my racial issue that was going on.
No, we're gonna get to the racial stuff too. As far as what you're saying, a lot of that is what we would call restorative justice. And Dr. Wenger was working pretty hard on some restorative justice policies and practices to put into place. I don't think we're there yet. And then I hate to say this, and I wish I had other words, but I don't, but the campus model kind of included some portions that kind of made the students take ownership which leads to pride, which leads to better behavior. And those portions of the campus model were based on, it was based on a book, and I don't remember it offhand, that was written by people in New England who instituted similar policies. And is there a Northern Dauphin School District, or what's it called?
Upper Dauphin.
Upper Dauphin? They actually instituted portions of it too, and Dr. Wenger and I went and spent the day at, what's it called again, Upper Dauphin, and observed how they do things, and those portions were actually molded into what was called the campus model last year. And a lot of it was that 9th period where they were supposed to rotate the mentoring, and part of that was exactly what you were saying, where there was some small maintenance things that the kids were supposed to partake in, some litter picking and things like that. But that was all in a broader effort to clean up that climate.
Only 2% of those schools in New England were successful, though.
I don't know.
No, I know. I did my that's where I did all my research at in the beginning.
I think that was here's the piece. Understand that while a lot of us who oppose the campus model didn't oppose it for what was in it.
No.
Opposed it for the process and how it was worked and pushed out. And
How we were lied to.
Shoved down our throats.
Yeah, and I don't understand any of that stuff, and
Right, and
I
I'm just
purposely steer
saying-
clear.
No, they did it
Wow.
anyway, but still.
While we're asking for some of those similar things that are in there, the pieces that we're asking for are the pieces that our school needed at those particular
And those
time
pieces are
frames.
still on the table, and I guess the point I was trying to make was, hopefully I was providing a little bit of comfort in the fact that we did recognize those things you're talking about, and we have had conversations, and we've had looked at, and are still looking at instituting them, trying to find the ways to do it. But personally, I agree with just about everything you've said. I
But
think-
more in a positive manner is what you guys are looking for, not necessarily doing it as a punishment.
Exactly.
Okay.
Whether or not we could get away with doing it as a punishment, I
That's
don't.
what I was just
Yeah.
gonna say, there's always, you know, this from your background and your special
just
ed,
saying
you
there's-
cannot do the negative punishment piece.
It's not a
of
negative
it.
punishment, you're beautifying the school because your behavior was horrid.
Mhm. But whether or not that would,
Is that your
You're
positive
fixing the
behavior
problems
piece?
that you created.
Because
She's
of your
twisting some words there, you know?
Because of your behavior, you now need to beautify the school.
yes, but I don't know what would fly and what wouldn't.
Right,
Again,
and
the
I
other-
get it, I get it.
But we have looked at those very things, and we do understand that concept, and we embrace that concept.
I'm
I
just
still-
saying, because my child has spoke in front of the entire school board saying, listen, why don't we have some types of these things? Because detentions don't work, like,
Especially the in-school.
in school doesn't work, detention,
In
like,
school's not even monitored.
But
There's
I-
a person doing it there, but
and it's probably
they're not
difficult
even-
because they probably have a class that they're supposed to be doing, because I know that
No, actually,
there
I
have
think
been a
it's
couple
someone
of
they
people
hired just
in
to
and
do
out.
that.
Yeah, but she has a ton of other responsibilities too,
Yeah.
sub-calling and all kinds of other
and
things.
different people can move in and out of the, depending on the schedule.
And assignments are issued
Right.
by different teachers, there's a whole host of
And they go
inadequacies.
for lunch, I mean, like, they bring the lunch to the.
Yeah.
And
farm.
the software
And
to
they're
view the students' computers is by the students' teachers, and if it's not their student, they can't necessarily see.
Oh, it doesn't matter, Chloe's broken that firewall 3 times and all the filters.
Chloe?
She's hacked that school 10 times over.
Oh my God.
That's why she's blackballed.
Yeah, that doesn't,
I got something left.
Before you even came here, she had already hacked it 3 times, and I had already had the computer removed.
I learned very quickly that it's not hard. And the sad thing is we are right in line with every other school district in the IU anyway, because we all talk, we all do the same things. We all purchase the same products because it's all done through the IU.
Yeah, but when your special needs kid can hack it in 6th grade and 7th grade and 8th grade, there's kind of a problem.
I suspect you're right. And you know what? I can't even get up. I don't even have cell service in my damn office, and she's hacking.
Exactly, right, exactly, that's what I'm saying, like, on the school computer, that's happened, so
I don't even know what you're talking about.
I can't even,
So, I'm trying to get,
let's, to the racial piece, is that what you wanted?
But yeah, I just wanted to express the fact that if you're gonna follow one policy, they all have to be followed.
Yes.
You can't pick and choose what policies you wanna follow. I
I-
made a point the other day when I talked to the dean of students.
I think the first step in that process is
No, he don't
organizing
follow
our
nothing. We
policies.
know that. He don't even follow.
Yes, and
Now,
I think that that's half the
the,
problem, because I don't think that everybody
rules for,
understands what the
having
policy
clearances.
is, even though it's all out there for anybody to pull off of the website.
Well, I think they know the policies because they throw them in your face, like, oh, this is policy, but then they flip it and then they do something different, but
Right.
it just depends on who the student is.
You're
That's
giving them
right.
way too much credit. I think they just look up the policy when it goes to that situation and then
Oh.
tell you that it's that policy.
Oh, I'm sure, but I'm just, I mean, firsthand, unfortunately, it depends on who the student is, whether they follow the policy or
right.
not.
And I think that's always gonna be the problem, because like you were saying, is consequences, setting them in place, those boundaries, that thing. It's the same thing as you're taught when you're a parent. It needs to be consistent, irregardless of if it's the tall kid, the smart kid, the one you like the best, it has to be consistent.
And unfortunately, at this period of time, we're right smack dab in the middle of a period of time where we're actually going backwards in that regard, not forward.
Yep.
And let me tell you something, to get traction as you're sliding backwards as fast as we are, just think of yourself driving a car on some ice. You can mash the gas to the floor and guess what? You're still sliding backwards. That's what's happening to us right now.
Yeah, there's only a few that we gotta get rid of.
Well, it-
It's almost impossible at this point to dole out consequences without repercussions and battles and problems. It's,
Yeah,
You
yeah.
gotta start
Like, I'll be-
somewhere though.
I know we do,
We-
and
we
it's
have to
on both
start with
sides.
small, and it is on both sides, and parents are not, by
But it's
all
on both
means,
sides
it's
of
parents,
kids, too.
It's on
Mhm.
kids,
Yeah.
it's on adults, I mean, but somebody has got to step in the middle and say, all right, I've had enough. It's now policies and
That's
procedures, here it
exactly
is.
why I'm sitting here tonight.
Right, we can't hold the kids accountable if the administration can't be held
Well, we
accountable.
can hold them accountable in our home,
Well,
Right.
it's scary
But
because these
not
kids
out there.
aren't afraid. They're not
No.
afraid of the administration. They have no respect.
No.
These fights that are happening, these kids know it. It's being planned.
I know that.
It's ridiculous, and that outside of school. But if anything happens outside of the school with a student, it's an outside of school problem, and they can't. But they have to understand, those technology is so bad with these kids and these social media. If it's outside and they're bringing it in, it's a school problem. Like our issue.
What,
He-
what,
If they bring their cell
He
phone
now
and they brought their
follows.
social
He
media.
now follows the girls to cheer 45 minutes away.
Well,
you know, my kid in middle school has to keep his phone in his locker. If the phone is on his person during the school day, with the exception of lunch, they're allowed to check their messages and whatever at lunch and that's it. There's consequences.
right, but now if you're gonna hold
Take the phone off a kid in our district.
you do
Well,
that
yeah,
in
but
our
they-
district, you gotta start with the teachers as well.
There's been suggestions made in regards to that, and I have made suggestions. I've even made them in the middle of my IEP conversations because it was brought up. And in the Midwest, they had the same problems. Try to take a phone off a kid and see what happens to you.
I'm all for
So
taking the
then-
phones away,
Then
but
what
the
has
teachers gotta give up too.
Is that in each classroom, there was slots made for how many other desks they had, how many other kids they had, and their phones were dropped in as attendance. It was part of the attendance policy. If you did not have a phone, there was a document that needed to be signed off by the parent, and there were repercussions put into place if by fact you did have a phone and lied about the fact
I don't
that you
agree
don't.
with that, no.
I'm just saying what
Right,
happened
right,
in
I
the
hear you.
Midwest. And so what transpired, yes, was there an uproar? Absolutely. Parents were absolutely insane. And then of course you have all of those school shootings and everything else. But the kids got used to just putting them in there, and at least it chilled it. And you were able to at least get them to think and do without this in their hand constantly.
Well, could you imagine what the day would be like without, I mean, with my girls? Everything is so hyped up with these phones. oh, we're gonna put this on Snapchat, or we're gonna put this on
Well, that's
Facebook,
what
we're
I
gonna
mean,
do this,
this
we're gonna
is
do that.
In the middle English class.
Yeah, and if you would
I
take
know.
that away, there wouldn't be, you would eliminate that, because I
Well-
think that's a lot of stress for kids, because then you spend, at least every class is either 10 or 15 minutes of, put your phone away, don't do this, don't do,
Yeah.
and it has to revolve around the phone. Whether somebody's getting in trouble or not, you can't tell me every teacher's not saying, put your phone away.
But yet they're supposed to use the phone to check out of class. too.
Well, some of the teachers I know in our district have cell phone jail. You have two opportunities. If they talk to you the second time, it gets put into a bin, and then you can have it at the end of class. Now, it's not made out to be this big, huge thing, but it's done at the end of class, to where parents are not being like freaked out, like you have to have your parent come and get your phone. Like, that might be a problem to start with, but you gotta start somewhere.
Well-
So if we start with cell phone
Yeah.
jail,
But
and
then
you
you
get
have to-
2 days and you
If
put
I
it
were
in.
in charge, cell phones would be the first thing to go,
Well,
I
then you
promise
have
you.
to,
And Jen
that's
Hassler
different.
and Benjamin Wenger.
if you were in charge, things would be different, because right now, like, as a parent, my fear is not you, but it's the other parties. I'm afraid of what would happen if my daughter doesn't have communication with me. Juliana's done with school completely, you know, Adriana's still in, but that worries me as a parent, only because one, sitting here, we know what our kids that our kids are targeted. We've had it, we've seen it firsthand in every aspect. So it's like a double-edged sword, because if we take it away,
But it was something, we've gotta start consequences
yeah,
somewhere.
yeah.
And
Hair, something.
We gotta hold the
Big one.
administration accountable first.
Right,
Well,
and
and I
a
think that would
contract
be a
with
problem.
Mr. Martin.
Oh, and see, and that's it, so each teacher is taking responsibility for their classroom and their students within that classroom. The problem is it's not necessarily, I don't know that it's necessarily within the classrooms as much
Rather
as
than an
it's
issue
out.
with it, so. we
I
have
think there's a
contract.
significant amount in the classrooms too.
Well, and I would think so too, but if the teachers have not made their consequences known and put those in, or don't feel that they can give those consequences,
I think now you're touching on something.
so, but that's what I'm saying, like, there needs to be that equalization.
Mhm.
Teachers
You want me to
need to
tell
be
you?
able to have their domain, except, like, of course, not corporal punishment, treating kids horribly or anything of that nature. But they need to be able to structure their classroom for the style of teaching that is needed per class for each student.
Agreed.
Several teachers have made it clear that if it gets to this point and they have to go to administration, okay, do you really want me to go that far, or I just need to let it go? Like, they know that they can't do what they need to do in a classroom.
Here's where I think it needs to start, and again, my personal opinion, for what it's worth, which is typically nothing. I think that the school board needs to hand authority back to the administration and support
A new
them.
administration, not the one we got now.
And so, well, they need support whether they like it or not. It's one of those things, and you know, like when you're disciplining your kids, if mom and dad aren't on the same team and one side or the other can be played, you got nothing. And until the administration has the support of the board, regardless, then they are reluctant, I feel, to do what needs done. And if the teachers feel like they're not getting administrative support, then they are reluctant to do what needs done. And what happens is you start letting little stuff slide because, well, what's going to happen anyway? And then the little stuff turns into big stuff, turns into bigger stuff, and even bigger stuff, and here we are.
A free for all.
I think what we need is, I think we need the administrators to give power back to the board.
Yeah.
Because they're not, the administrators are doing whatever they want,
Yes, they are.
regardless of what the board says.
You
It's
haven't
They're
even,
coming up with, the board asked, just one example, the board asked at the beginning of the year for them to rewrite the curriculum for one of the courses and make it 2 courses. At last Tuesday meeting, they presented 1 course. Just one example.
And
And they
this-
put through the campus when they were told not to put through campus.
And then the one Shih Tzu person She said, well, we're administration, we do whatever
Yeah.
we want.
So,
And it's on
here-
film.
So it's,
So not
watch the
to put you
video.
into a predicament, because I see that you're a little uncomfortable
Yeah,
with
get
the way
there.
that conversation is rolling. So let me bring it to generalities for you. So the problems that, I can appreciate where you need to have stuff, where you think that things need to be. Had the administration or had the powers that be to give those type of consequences out, shown consistency and fairness across the board, irregardless of who gives what to whom or anything else, or if I know your baby's mama or however it rolls. If it had been consistent, had the past not been handled the way that it was, and accountability was given, I would agree with you. Like I said before, trust is very difficult to regain once it's been lost. Now you have 20, 30 families that have literally been smacked across the face because they've entrusted things that have happened, stuff that has gone on in the district with their child, gone to those that needed to know about it to get answers to bring those things to them, and feel that they've been smacked across the face. And then those families come, go, in, out, not in the district, stick out to stay in the district, it comes in all forms. Have a hard time with giving power to the powers that be up here, when you have the ultimate power up here, the school board, not being able to do anything to make sure everybody is in their place. So it's like if the president decided that he was just gonna do whatever he wanted, and da-da-da-da-da-da, and all his generals were like, holy crap, what the hell is going on? And they're not coming at him trying to give him the information that he needs to kind of give him more backing. They're still gonna back him. They're not gonna like it, but the end result is not mass genocide. And that's kind of how the district is falling, because it's being mass genocide, and it's being picked and choose as if we were, these type of people or those type of people.
Look, they
or other type of
broke
people.
laws, they need to be held accountable.
Well, it's
And that's the other piece.
Obscene material is a Pennsylvania state law, they need to be held accountable,
It's
no
a
matter
majority
what.
thing at these board meetings. And I will say this about all of us. We've been quiet, we've been respectful, we've followed, the rules, and we've been good.
I've broken a rule, but I was
Okay.
able to take mine down.
But when certain administration gets up there, it's attitude, it's comments, not just towards parents, but to the board.
Yeah, and
You
we're
have
getting
these
tired of
snide
it. We will be
remarks,
speaking out.
And you have these comments, and you have the attitude, and you have the whole environment when that person or that, the people get up there to speak. It's annoying. It already starts just when they start talking.
They roll
And
their
then,
eyes.
listen, the board pisses me off a lot. But I think at this moment in time, if I had to choose which one I could trust more, I would choose the board. Only because I know that's real helpful, but because I look at the one person who was supposed to, the two people actually, but he's the one's gone. One person that's supposed to be there for the parents, for the kids, for the community, and you can't even talk to that woman. You just can't. You can't talk to her. There's not one thing that she has done positive for at least us that are in this room and many others. And now that's what we have to sit and deal with.
I think
Because of her,
people-
you had me yelling in your office one night.
Well, I mean,
because
Well, and
she
I
couldn't trust
think-
the situation.
Yeah, and then
While
I
I
really,
was sitting there.
There's a common
I think it has to
denominator
do
here. I mean,
with
it don't
the
take
climate
a
piece. So when you
mathematician to
go
figure
into
that
a
out.
meeting and it's
You know what I mean?
automatically,
but that's the way everybody is now. Everybody
But-
is so on the defensive that they go offense.
But it can't
Well-
be, like, how is it that?
No, somebody has to be the first to step back.
Well, and that's the thing, so how is it that the parents are expected to step back and not say anything and shh, don't say it, we'll fix it,
Yeah.
we'll fix it, we'll fix it. But, so it doesn't happen, you get, I mean, how many strikes shall we be getting? So I think what we're saying is, the climate of our downhill slide, if you will, has to do with the behavior of what everybody is seeing on a daily basis. Right, wrong, or indifferent. The behavior and how people and how their demeanor is. I mean, if you're going into work and hate what you do, maybe you shouldn't be going into work.
And that's kind of how, not just the parents, but students, that's how they feel. And I think that plays a big part in why the kids act the way they do.
They're getting
And
frustrated.
They are. And when I have, we have kids that are suffering and have these conditions that people that have gone to war have. There's a problem there. When you can no longer have your kid at North London because the stress level is so high, there's a problem there. And to bring that up and try to address that with the administration, they don't want to hear it. The only man that is besides you, we have talked, but the only person that has sat and talked to my daughter, because you've never talked to my daughter. You haven't talked to either one of them. Not one administration has ever talked to my daughters. They wouldn't. Ed goes and sat and talked to my daughter when my daughter cried in that room, and we had to make the decision that for her safety, we could pull her from school. Because after day 3, she couldn't get out of bed, and now she's on pills, and the stress is so bad. And firsthand, we take my daughter to cheer, and she sees that person at cheer, and my daughter turned to a totally different person. Correct, Tammy?
I think it's the climate piece.
It is.
And
If
the
you-
problem is that we can't get anything in fast enough to fix it.
If
And
you-
there's nobody there willing to step in the middle and
Or
say,
go
all right, be
against them,
done.
yeah.
And I'm not saying nobody, I'm sure there are people who have tried, but we can all face it. You try and try, I mean, I've been throwing suggestions and holding all kinds of stuff for this district for as long as I can remember. And I'm completely frustrated at the fact that nothing is moving like it needs to be, and that kids are continuously feeling unsafe, and things are continuously happening at school. While I understand things like that can happen, it should not be happening if the climate is the way that it's supposed to be.
At the
It's
rate
like-
it's happening, actually.
We just want safety for the children.
If it's
That's all we
leadership
want.
in the climate, if you hang around with bank robbers, eventually, no
You're gonna rob a
surprise,
bank.
you're gonna rob a bank. So if they see administration not acting out and not doing what's right, and
It's not
not
even
getting
administration,
punishment,
adults,
or they see
anybody,
any other
any
adults doing that stuff, if they keep seeing that over and over and over and nothing's being done, they'll think they can get away with it. So if they don't fear repercussion of starting to fight, why not?
Well, and you have those kids who
You
know
gotta
that
start
they're,
clamping down
Yeah.
somewhere where you can, and you gotta start somewhere and start
you gotta pick a policy
getting
and pick
control of it,
one. Pick one.
and then keep going.
Well, I
to the
think
rest.
that's what they're trying with loading the lunchroom, at least 6A.
They
Are
like
you gonna
to,
continue that policy?
they like to watch
or-
As long
fights.
as we can. There's always
I
times
mean,
when
I
people
gotta
get
be
pulled, but
frank, there was opportunity to stop the situation that happened last week.
Absolutely.
Cause, somebody went in and stopped it, and there was this teacher standing right there watching the whole thing.
I wonder,
And it's not your fault, you were not there.
I'm just wondering too.
My question was why, if the teacher's seen, what happened to preventative measures? What happened to de-escalation?
You can
I
hear a
think-
kid yelling, they're gonna fight, break it, stop it. And they don't stop it.
I think the point what I'm trying to say is that people are not de-escalating situations when they see them. I'm talking adults. Why are the adults not de-escalating this situation?
Is it fear for retaliation?
That's
Is
what
it-
I wanna
what-
know.
What is it? Like why, like if I was a teacher, I would be on those kids like, why not?
We
sit
set
in
the
seat?
example
We
at
know
the
that.
administration level, the kids will fall into place.
Is every seat in the lunchroom taken, or is there
Pretty much.
It's
extra
pretty-
seats?
There might be a
That if you
handful, but it's
see
pretty
two
full.
guys together and they're starting to get Riley, can you then move that one of them to a different seat because of having an open seat somewhere so that you can move people around so that to de-escalate, give them some space?
Well, what about the way it's structured? Can you move it around?
I can't make
You
any of those
organize that?
decisions, so
But I'm
it's,
just thinking for the safety of the students, like couldn't you go
I
in
mean,
and be
these are-
like, hey, we probably should look at readjusting this?
I mean,
You-
you have
I
that.
I mean, these are all
see one.
suggestions I can bring forth,
That's
absolutely.
what I mean. They don't wanna listen to our suggestions because we don't know anything. So somebody's gotta be a spokesperson.
Now, what I
Because our
can,
kids are the ones getting plummeted.
what I can tell you is the number of arrests I've made this year compared to the last two has gone up exponentially.
Yeah, and why do you think that is? Do you
Like
think it's because of
20
kids, or do you
like
think it's
20
because
kids?
of they see that the administration, the higher powers
I think a lot
aren't
of
being
people
held
have cell
accountable,
phones nowadays.
so they're just
Okay.
like, screw it. let's
How
not
many
do it.
arrests do you have
We
this
have the
year versus
option, as
last
the
year?
school, we have the option of handling it administratively or going to the courts. And I think I have gotten to the point where, like what you said a few minutes ago, is there needs to be consequences and somebody has to start it.
Can
I
us
decided
parents,
to do it.
hey Mike, can us parents file charges on them? On the administration for passing around obscene material?
I suppose you could.
Okay, I'd like to start. I'd like to start the process with you. How do we go about? I want to file a report with
You
you.
would have to go file a private complaint with the district attorney's office. He
I
will
can't
give you-
file the charges on with you.
Not with me.
No,
Conflict
you
of
actually,
interest.
you
If you
actually
go to
have
the
to be
DA's
down
office
there.
and you ask for a private complaint, they'll give you one.
Okay, I'm on it.
I think my biggest worry is so much has been left go. And the kids that are having issues, it's being left go. So now instead of the bullies starting these fights, you're getting these kids that are just
Well, that's part of that backward slide I was
done.
talking about.
Yeah, like.
And once you start sliding, you can't get traction.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it's
can't-
hard.
I can't even begin to tell you, one of my kids had on Snapchat, one of her friends had on Snapchat, there were kids fighting at the park.
That's the new
In
thing.
Joystown Park, and
Joystown Park is
he's
the
like
thing.
sitting in his car filming it, and I'm like,
Oh yeah, Riley showed me that video. I
He's
was like,
not
what?
Let me, I can say this, what you're seeing and experiencing is not exclusive to Northern Lebanon. And the example I'll use is Shippensburg University. They have a significant problem with their freshman class right now with exactly what you're talking about, baiting people and filming fights.
They
Is
did
it
that.
entitlement?
Remember the DA from Harrisburg? His son did that crap.
is it entitlement?
Remember
Like,
two-
I
about
don't
4
know
years
if
ago.
entitlement's the word, but it's a total lack of empathy. That's where it starts.
And how do we get that back into?
Character building.
Yeah, but how? How do we implement that into all of the things in which you're working on? Like, is that piece gonna come into play?
That
Listen,
is
when
a
you
piece-
got parents partying with their own children,
Well, we can't
We'll-
have
we'll-
bad behavior, it's bad behavior.
We'll never overcome what happens at home.
Oh, absolutely
School will
not.
never overcome
But
that.
what is in the process to help with character building and problem solving skills? Because I think that's half the
It-
problem there too.
It
I
might be.
saw something when my son lived with his mother. It was, what's the New Holland's school districts?
Dover, maybe.
New
Or
Holland?
New Holland.
New
That's
Holland.
out. That's out.
Ah.
Lancaster.
The high school, the middle school there had a very good program that they did, and it was a pride program, putting pride, it was their Spartans thing, Spartans Pride. And I mean, they even had assemblies with,
We used to do
in-
that.
with
I heard it.
inspirational speakers
Yeah.
or talking on video or whatnot. So they had
We
some
did that.
good character building in
Here's what I
that
could-
as a good program to look at.
Here's what I can tell you that we're doing right now is we're doing all this
Garden spot maybe.
climate and culture stuff, and we're always focused on the high school and middle school because that's where the majority of the problems are. Ally and I are not forgetting the fact that we have work to do in the elementary centers.
Yeah, but they're so much easier to control.
They are, and there's a lot that we can do.
Well, they also have very respectful,
And those teachers have less time than any teacher in the district.
And not all of them
That
have cell
poses a
phones.
problem.
Well, but there needs to be a district-wide piece,
Yes.
elementary and build and build.
There
It
is.
needs to continue.
There is. And what we did was Ally and I we met with Dr. David Rogers, who was the president of the Pennsylvania chapter of the American Psychological Association. He also happens to specialize in adolescent behavior and things such as character building. And Pete pointed us in a couple of really good directions, and the first thing he told us was you have to start instituting policies at the elementary level and don't expect to see any solid results for about 5 years. He said you have to give yourself 5 years. If you look to next month or next school year, you're fooling yourselves. So he kind of opened up our eyes to that. And what we did was we got the school partnered with an organization called Project Wisdom. And what Project Wisdom does is they essentially provide the lesson plans and character building activities all geared toward that K through 5 level. And what that did was having those lesson plans means that we don't have to ask teachers to do more than they're already doing. So I'm not asking a teacher to integrate good character qualities into their lesson plans, because that's what the whole thing is designed to be integrated throughout the course of the day. So these traits are built into spelling, they're built into ELA, they're built into math, because you're always putting, trust, loyalty, courage, honesty, you're always pushing these traits. Project Wisdom helps us integrate that throughout the course of the school day. We haven't officially begun yet, but we have partnered with them. And then Ally and I took it a step further, and what we wanted to do was we wanted to involve the middle school and the high school kids. So we are taking the media class, Mr. George I think it is, and we're having daily messages, but we're having high school and middle school kids read and videotape the daily messages in front of a green screen, and then we're going to play these daily messages on that Viking TV in the morning at all of the elementary centers. So what we're doing is we're kind of bringing the elementary kids and the high school, middle school kids together so they can kind of look up and down on each other. We can convey these character traits and qualities that we want to convey, and everybody's kind of involved in it at all levels, and it's consistent throughout the district, which is something that I think we've been missing. What goes on in Fredericksburg may not happen in Lickdale. We want to kind of stop that, and we want the message to be common throughout.
Right.
So I think we have the first 5 or 6 messages filmed already, and once we get through the logistics of filming this stuff, we're going to put them all on YouTube, and we hope to have 30 messages at a clip stacked up and ready.